The room held its breath as Hillary Clinton leaned forward, her eyes sharp, her tone cutting. The question she posed wasn't casual. It carried the weight of experience, authority, and expectation. Every syllable dripped with scrutiny, and the crowd sensed it instantly. Reporters leaned in, cameras zoomed closer, and even the seasoned political operatives in the back shifted in their seats. This was a moment charged with tension, the kind of tension that could make or break reputations in an instant. Murmurs rippled through the audience, a low, anxious hum. The question landed like a well-aimed dart, testing composure, probing confidence. Clinton's presence dominated the space. Her gaze was calculated, unwavering, expecting to provoke a reaction. But across the table, Jasmine Crockett remained unshaken. There was a calmness in her posture, a steadiness in her eyes, a subtle lift of the chin that signaled she understood the game, and she was ready to play it on her terms. Then came the smile. Not the kind of nervous, polite smile one offers to diffuse tension, but a cold, deliberate curve of the lips, precise, controlled. It radiated confidence, almost audaciously so, and in that instant the room felt the shift. The energy snapped, a subtle but unmistakable crack in the air. Cameras caught it. Microphones picked up the change in murmurs. Clinton's eyes flickered for a moment, slight, imperceptible, but enough to register the recognition. Crockett's calm was not weakness. It was strategy. Every journalist, every aide, every viewer online could feel the pivot. What was meant to corner, to rattle, suddenly recoiled. The question had been asked, the scrutiny set, and yet it now hung impotently in the space between them. Jasmine's presence, her quiet confidence, had transformed the room. A laugh might have shattered it. A sharp retort could have rattled nerves. But instead, she chose a measured stillness that carried more force than any raised voice could. No one had expected this. Not the audience, not the pundits, not even Clinton herself. In a world of shouted debates and frantic interruptions, Jasmine Crockett reminded everyone that power sometimes comes softly, and composure can strike harder than confrontation. And as the silence stretched, pregnant with anticipation, one truth became undeniable. This was only the beginning. No one could have predicted how her quiet confidence would leave even Clinton unsettled. To understand the gravity of this moment, you need to step back. This wasn't just a fleeting exchange caught on camera. It was a collision of eras, of values, and of power. Hillary Clinton, a figure who has navigated the highest corridors of political authority for decades, represented the established order, experience, expectation, and the weight of precedent. Her questions carried not just scrutiny, but the subtle authority of someone accustomed to shaping narratives, directing conversations, and commanding attention. On the other side sat Jasmine Crockett, a rising progressive star, young, unapologetic, and fiercely principled. Her presence alone disrupted the norms of this space. Here was a new generation asserting itself, demanding to be heard, refusing to shrink under the weight of centuries of political hierarchy. Every move, every glance, every calculated pause spoke to a broader narrative. The future of American politics was being reshaped, and voices like hers were no longer content to remain peripheral. The stakes were immense. This confrontation symbolized far more than a single-pointed question. It was gendered, too, a young black woman standing her ground against a seasoned political veteran. The air was charged with the unspoken history of women in power, of voices that had long been dismissed, ignored, or underestimated. Crockett's composure in the face of Clinton's challenge was a statement. Authority can be questioned, respect can be demanded, and dignity can be maintained, even under pressure. Beyond gender, this was a generational moment. The room was a microcosm of America itself. Old political norms meeting the wave of progressive energy sweeping across the country. It was a moment that encapsulated the tension between experience and innovation, tradition and transformation. Every observer, whether seated in the gallery or watching online, sensed the weight of what was unfolding. This was a test, not just of knowledge or policy, but of composure, presence, and moral authority. The audience felt it immediately. Conversations among aides paused mid-sentence. Cameras lingered on every micro-expression. Journalists whispered to one another, sensing they were witnessing more than a debate. They were witnessing a turning point. Every subtle shift in posture, every deliberate breath taken by Crockett, carried symbolic significance. She wasn't merely responding to a question. She was embodying a broader movement, one that demanded to be recognized, respected, and taken seriously. And yet, even as the crowd absorbed the tension, the undercurrent of curiosity grew. What would she say next? How would Clinton respond to this unexpected equilibrium? This wasn't just a pointed question, it was a test of composure and power. One misstep could unravel credibility. One deft, confident move could rewrite expectations entirely. The air was electric, thick with anticipation, and the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next moment that would define not just the conversation, but the larger narrative of emerging leadership and the reshaping of American politics. The stage was set. The stakes were clear, and every eye in the room and beyond knew this confrontation would echo far past this single exchange, signaling the rise of voices that refused to be silenced or underestimated. Hillary Clinton's name carries weight. Decades in public service, from First Lady to U.S. Senator to Secretary of State, have built her a reputation few can rival. She is meticulous, prepared, and relentless, someone who approaches every question, every exchange, every debate with a calculated strategy honed over decades. Her questions are never casual. They are instruments designed to test knowledge, unearth weaknesses, and command the conversation. Those who face her quickly learn that her strength lies not in volume but in precision. Each word, each pause, each inflection carries intention. From the moment she enters a room, Clinton exudes authority. There is a quiet power in the way she listens, the way she leans in, the subtle sharpness of her gaze. She has spent years reading body language, predicting reactions, and steering conversations with the subtle art of persuasion. Across political landscapes, she has cultivated the ability to disarm opponents not with aggression alone, but with a mix of gravitas and intellect that makes even the most confident adversaries hesitate. It is a skill few can replicate, and one that has consistently placed her a step ahead in high-stakes exchanges. Her legacy is not just measured in positions held, but in moments dominated. The Senate floor, global summits, presidential debates, all arenas where she turned pressure into advantage, expectation into authority. Colleagues and critics alike know her as formidable, as someone who thrives in situations where stakes are high and scrutiny is intense. Over the years, she has built a persona that is both respected and feared, a combination that ensures her presence commands attention. Yet even the most experienced can misjudge. Clinton's confidence, born from decades of expertise, often borders on overconfidence. She knows the rules of engagement, the tactics that have historically worked, and the pressure points that unnerve most challengers. It is this very assurance that can be a double-edged sword. The belief that preparation and reputation alone guarantee control sometimes blinds even the most seasoned strategist to the nuance of a new, emerging voice. One that is sharp, poised, and unflinching in ways the established order may not anticipate. This moment with Jasmine Crockett was one such test. Clinton approached it with the same rigor, the same expectation of dominance she had wielded countless times before. Her question was sharp, intended to unsettle, designed to expose any hesitation or misstep. The audience, aware of her track record, expected her to steer the conversation, to hold control effortlessly, to remind everyone why decades of political maneuvering had made her untouchable in debate settings. But there is a subtle difference between experience and infallibility. The same strategy that worked on seasoned colleagues, on familiar political adversaries, could falter when met with a presence that refused to yield. Crockett's calm, measured demeanor, paired with a confidence rooted in authenticity and purpose, introduced a variable Clinton had rarely encountered. The equation of authority and dominance suddenly had a new factor, one that could destabilize the predictable rhythm Clinton relied upon. As the room absorbed the charged atmosphere, the unspoken truth became apparent. Experience alone wouldn't guarantee control this time. Clinton's history, her preparation, her reputation, all formidable assets, were now being tested against something equally potent: quiet, resolute confidence. The kind of presence that doesn't react in haste, that doesn't falter under scrutiny, and that commands attention without raising a voice. And as the cameras lingered on Clinton's composed exterior, a subtle tension flickered across her expression. A slight narrowing of the eyes, a measured pause in her posture, signals that even the most seasoned political strategist sensed the unpredictable force sitting opposite her. This was not another routine exchange. This was a moment that could redefine the balance of authority. And in that charged silence, one realization echoed. Decades of experience might not be enough to maintain control when confronted by unshakable composure and a voice unafraid to disrupt the established order. Jasmine Crockett's rise in politics was never a path paved with ease. From her earliest days, she learned the power of perseverance, of turning challenges into stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. Growing up in a community often overlooked by the political establishment, Crockett developed an acute awareness of the disparities that define modern America. She witnessed firsthand the struggles of families striving for opportunity, the frustration of voices ignored, and the resilience required to fight for recognition and justice. These experiences did more than shape her worldview. They forged the foundation of her character, instilling a drive that would define every step of her journey. Her entry into public service was marked not by privilege, but by determination. Crockett built her career on grassroots activism, engaging with communities directly, listening to their stories, and advocating for policies that would tangibly improve lives. She became known for her meticulous preparation, her ability to distill complex policy into actionable solutions, and her relentless pursuit of fairness. Yet what set her apart was not just intellect, it was the combination of intellect with empathy. She could navigate legal frameworks, political arenas, and media scrutiny while remaining deeply connected to the people she represented. This duality of sharp mind and human understanding made her a formidable figure in any debate or negotiation. Crockett's reputation for composure under pressure became legendary. Colleagues, opponents, and observers alike would note how she could face aggressive questioning, public scrutiny, and high-stakes confrontations without faltering. While others might respond with defensiveness or indignation, Crockett maintained a calm, measured demeanor, allowing her to respond with clarity and precision. This was not passivity. It was strategic mastery. She understood that power often resides not in the volume of one's voice, but in the conviction behind it. Each word was deliberate, each pause purposeful, and every gesture reinforced her command of the moment. Her identity, rooted in pride for her heritage, her community, and her principles, was central to her strength. Crockett did not attempt to shrink herself to fit traditional molds of political behavior. Instead, she embraced her authentic voice, using it to challenge norms, redefine expectations, and inspire those who saw themselves reflected in her presence. She understood that representation matters, and that showing up fully as oneself is a radical act in a system often built to marginalize dissenting or rising voices. This unapologetic authenticity became a signature of her public persona, resolute, fearless, and impossibly compelling. Throughout her career, Crockett encountered opposition from figures who underestimated her because of her youth, her background, or her unconventional approach. Each encounter became a proving ground, a chance to transform perceived disadvantage into a demonstration of strength. She honed the ability to convert tension into opportunity, to take the weight of confrontation and turn it into a platform for clarity, moral authority, and persuasive power. It was this skill that allowed her to face the most formidable adversaries with poise, to withstand attempts at intimidation, and to emerge with dignity intact. Her intellect was matched by an instinctive understanding of timing and delivery. Crockett knew when to interject, when to let silence work in her favor, and when a single measured line could carry more impact than a flurry of words. She had learned the power of restraint, of letting confidence speak louder than volume, and of crafting responses that landed with precision. These traits transformed her from a competent legislator into a commanding presence capable of shifting the energy of any room she entered. By the time she faced Hillary Clinton, Crockett had already amassed a record of navigating high-pressure situations with grace and strategic acumen. She had seen opponents attempt to rattle her with sharp questions, veiled critiques, and public scrutiny, and she had consistently turned those moments into platforms for demonstrating competence, conviction, and courage. She had learned to anticipate tactics, read subtleties, and respond in ways that elevated the discourse rather than simply reacting. Every encounter reinforced her ability to hold her ground while advancing her message with clarity and force. What made Crockett extraordinary was not just her preparedness, but her mindset. She approached confrontations as opportunities, not threats. Every question posed, every challenge presented, was a stage upon which she could assert authority, clarify truth, and redefine expectations. She did not view opposition as a personal attack, but as a chance to educate, inspire, and assert principles that transcended the immediate exchange. This perspective allowed her to remain unshaken, to convert tension into narrative control, and to wield composure as both shield and sword. As she settled into the moment opposite Hillary Clinton, Crockett's calm was both a statement and a signal. She wasn't merely answering questions. She was asserting that experience alone did not dictate dominance, that authority could be respectfully challenged, and that a rising voice could claim space without diminishing the weight of those who came before. The audience could sense the quiet power in her posture, the intentionality behind her gaze, and the readiness in her poised demeanor. And in that charged room, with decades of political weight sitting across from her, the truth became clear. Jasmine Crockett was not simply prepared for this confrontation. She was built for it. Each challenge she had faced, each barrier she had navigated, each expectation she had defied, had led to this precise moment. She carried with her not just knowledge and skill, but the unshakable confidence of someone who understood that calm, intelligent conviction could command respect and alter the course of even the most daunting exchanges. She wasn't just answering questions, she was rewriting expectations. The room was electric with anticipation as Hillary Clinton leaned forward, her eyes sharp and calculating. Every gesture, every measured inflection in her voice carried the weight of decades of political mastery. She began with her first question, precise and probing, designed to unsettle and test Crockett's composure. The audience braced, expecting the young progressive to stumble under the intensity of such scrutiny. Reporters scribbled notes frantically, cameras zoomed in, and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Clinton's questions came fast, each layered with implication, each carrying the unspoken pressure of authority. There was a rhythm to her delivery, a push and pull designed to catch her opponent off guard, to expose uncertainty, to make hesitation visible. Her tone, at times firm, at times subtly condescending, was calculated to probe weaknesses and highlight contrasts between established experience and rising ambition. Yet Crockett remained unflinching. Her posture was impeccable, her hands relaxed, and her eyes locked with Clinton's without a hint of doubt. Each response she delivered was measured, deliberate, and precise. She did not raise her voice, did not resort to defensive rhetoric, and did not betray impatience. Instead, she infused every sentence with calm authority, the kind that commanded attention not through volume but through clarity and conviction. Her words were assertive without aggression, firm without arrogance, a balance that unsettled more than it reassured. The audience, initially expecting a one-sided exchange, began to sense a shift. The energy in the room changed as Crockett's composure contrasted sharply with Clinton's intensity. Close-ups captured subtle reactions, a slight tightening of lips, a barely perceptible narrowing of eyes, the pause between words that suggested reconsideration. Reporters leaned forward, anticipating a crack, but none came. Instead, Crockett's answers carried weight, reframing each question into a demonstration of insight and poise. As Clinton pressed further, attempting to escalate the pressure, Crockett absorbed each challenge like water flowing over stone. She acknowledged the questions with respect, yet never ceded narrative control. Each response was a precise counterbalance, redirecting the focus from personal confrontation to principle, from intimidation to substance. The tension grew not because Crockett faltered, but because she refused to falter. The audience realized that this was no ordinary exchange, no simple test of knowledge or rhetoric. Every pause was deliberate, every glance intentional. Crockett's subtle use of timing amplified the impact of her words, letting the weight of her reasoning resonate in the silence that followed. The room, initially conditioned to expect conflict and spectacle, found itself captivated by restraint and precision. Clinton's experience, formidable as it was, met a counterforce that could not be rushed. Shaken or outmaneuvered, the murmurs grew. The cameras lingered. The reporters adjusted their narratives in real time. Social dynamics played out in microcosm. Allies exchanged looks of approval. Skeptics leaned in with disbelief, and the audience collectively sensed that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Every question, every answer, layered suspense upon suspense, building toward a moment that none could yet predict. And then, as Clinton poised her next question, the unspoken realization swept the room. No ordinary response would follow. Crockett's calm was not hesitation. It was mastery. Her measured tone, icy confidence, and unwavering composure signaled that the next words would not just answer, they would command, inspire, and redefine the conversation itself. Then the room realized that this moment, this exchange, would be unforgettable. The room held its collective breath. Every eye was fixed on Jasmine Crockett, every camera lens honed in on her poised figure. Hillary Clinton's latest question had landed like a well-aimed arrow, sharp and unforgiving, designed to pierce through uncertainty. But Crockett, calm as ever, let the words linger in the air for a fraction of a second longer than expected. She tilted her head slightly, a small, almost imperceptible smile crossing her face. Not smug, not flippant, but measured, confident, and deadly precise. The kind of smile that suggests a storm is about to break in the most elegant way. Then she spoke. Her words were succinct, sharp, and unflinchingly honest. There was no raised voice, no flailing defense, no desperate over-explanation. Every syllable carried weight, every pause deliberate, as if each sentence had been carved from steel. She addressed the question directly, but reframed it entirely, shifting the power dynamics in the room. Instead of reacting to Clinton's authority, Crockett redirected the narrative with calm assertiveness. It was as if the entire exchange had been waiting for her to turn the tide. And now she had. For a heartbeat, the room was silent. Reporters paused mid-pen stroke, cameras lingered on faces, and the audience collectively felt the shift. The silence was not just the absence of noise, it was an audible acknowledgement of mastery. People leaned in, sensing that they were witnessing a moment that would be discussed for years to come. Clinton, momentarily taken aback, paused herself. Her practiced composure, her decades of political experience, meant something she could not simply navigate with routine strategy. She tilted her head, a subtle narrowing of her eyes, and for the first time in the exchange, a flicker of uncertainty passed across her expression. Crockett's composure was absolute. She did not rush, did not raise her voice, did not signal aggression. She let the tension hang, allowing the gravity of her words to sink in. The room's energy, previously dominated by Clinton's authoritative presence, subtly shifted. Now Crockett's calm confidence commanded attention. Every gesture, every carefully measured pause reinforced her control. Her calm was a weapon, her restraint a form of power. The contrast between her steady gaze and Clinton's momentary hesitation was stark, almost cinematic. An unmistakable shift in dominance that the audience could feel viscerally. The reaction was immediate and visceral. Gasps traveled like a wave through the crowd. A few reporters whispered to one another, unsure whether they should have expected such a controlled yet devastating response. Social media-savvy staff in the room began typing furiously, anticipating the viral impact of what had just occurred. The phrase "mic drop" came to mind for many, but even that seemed insufficient to describe the quiet magnitude of Crockett's triumph. It wasn't a moment of anger or spectacle. It was a calculated, dignified dismantling of intimidation. Eyes darted around, capturing micro-reactions. A veteran journalist raised an eyebrow in admiration. A student observer whispered to her friend, disbelief mixing with awe. The tension that had defined the room for the past several minutes dissipated like fog under the morning sun, replaced by an electric recognition. Crockett had just flipped the narrative entirely. Clinton, though seasoned and formidable, found herself momentarily navigating a landscape she could not control. The energy, the rhythm, the momentum, everything had shifted. Crockett's answer did more than respond. It illuminated. She reframed the debate, emphasizing principle over posturing, truth over intimidation, and clarity over chaos. Every word resonated with integrity. Every pause emphasized poise. The subtle nods and quiet acknowledgement of her intelligence and strength traveled like ripples through the room. Supporters felt a surge of pride. Skeptics felt a momentary doubt, and observers couldn't help but recognize the rarity of such measured dominance. The moment was electric with tension, yet grounded in the dignity of someone who refused to be rattled. As her words settled into the consciousness of everyone present, the atmosphere shifted from suspense to awe. Cameras captured lingering shots of audience members' faces, the raised eyebrows, the open-mouthed expressions of admiration, the subtle nods of recognition. Even those previously skeptical of her capabilities could not deny the authority she projected. There was a universality in the response. Calm intellect had triumphed over shouting. Measured confidence had silenced intimidation, and authenticity had outshone performance. The social implications were immediate. Whispered phrases like unbelievable, calm and fearless, and owned the room floated through the crowd. Staff and observers instinctively reached for their phones, predicting the moment would explode online. Memes, clips, and analyses would ripple across platforms, dissected by commentators, amplified by supporters, and debated by detractors. The anticipation of viral reaction added another layer of electricity, the sense that Crockett's composed brilliance would not remain confined to this single room. It was a spectacle that demanded to be shared, discussed, and remembered. Yet what made the moment truly unforgettable was the emotional resonance. Crockett's triumph was not merely strategic, it was symbolic. In an arena historically dominated by towering authority figures, her calm, deliberate response represented more than a victory in debate. It was a triumph of dignity, of measured intelligence, of the quiet but undeniable power of composure. Every observer, whether in the room or witnessing the clip later online, felt the subtle moral lesson embedded in her performance. Fearlessness does not require volume. Mastery does not require aggression, and true power lies in command of self, not the domination of others. Even as Clinton composed herself, attempting to regain control, the moment lingered. The energy Crockett had generated did not dissipate. It resonated throughout the room, leaving an impression that could not be erased. Conversations paused, pens hovered over notebooks, and viewers, whether in person, in media rooms, or watching live, recognized the weight of what had just unfolded. Crockett had demonstrated that authority can be challenged without theatrics, that intimidation can be met with grace, and that composure can silence even the loudest of critics. As the discussion continued, it was clear that the dynamic had irreversibly shifted. Crockett's mastery over tone, timing, and narrative control set a new standard for political discourse in this chamber. The silence that followed her words was not empty. It was full of recognition, respect, and an almost tangible awe. Observers felt a connection, a spark of inspiration that transcended partisan divides. This was the power of self-assured conviction, delivered with calm precision. And as the moment closed, as the room exhaled collectively and cameras slowly pulled back, there was an unspoken understanding. This was more than a response. It was a statement. Crockett had not just answered a question. She had claimed her space, commanded the narrative, and left an indelible mark. The ripples would be felt immediately across social media, in headlines, in whispered conversations, and in the quiet admiration of those present. No one left the room the same. Hillary Clinton, momentarily unsettled, recalibrated, but the undeniable truth lingered. Jasmine Crockett had just delivered a mic-drop counterattack that transcended the moment. Calm, composed, and resolute, she had shown that true authority is earned not through dominance, but through unwavering confidence and measured brilliance. In that instant, the audience collectively understood what they had witnessed. Dignity prevailing over intimidation, poise prevailing over posturing, and an unforgettable triumph that would echo far beyond the walls of the debate chamber. The social media explosion was inevitable. The lesson was timeless, and the hero had firmly, silently, and decisively claimed victory. The moment Crockett delivered her calm, incisive response, the world seemed to pause for an instant. Then, as if the silence in the chamber had triggered a digital domino effect, social media erupted. Hashtags ignited across platforms. Jasmine wins, calm and unstoppable, mic drop Crockett. Short clips of her icy smile and measured reply were shared, reshared, and dissected endlessly. Every major platform became a stage for instant analysis, reactions, and debate. Twitter feeds flooded with admiration. Instagram reels captured slow-motion expressions of awe, and TikTok exploded with sound bites that perfectly encapsulated the moment's intensity. Supporters celebrated with glee, screenshots capturing her composed demeanor circulating like wildfire. Memes began to appear within minutes. Crockett standing serene while Clinton's expression flickered in surprise, captions praising her poise and intellectual dominance. Comments flowed like a tidal wave. This is how you own a room without shouting. Finally, someone showing what true power looks like. Calm, collected, and untouchable, legendary. The excitement wasn't just political, it was deeply emotional. Immigrant communities, progressive youth, and identity-conscious viewers saw themselves reflected in her unshakable confidence, feeling validation and inspiration in every frame. On the other side, traditionalists and seasoned analysts dissected her performance with more measured language, yet the awe was palpable even in critique. Panel discussions on cable news channels replayed the clip repeatedly, breaking down every word, every pause, every subtle shift in tone. Commentators debated not just what she said, but how she said it, acknowledging the rare mastery of self-control and rhetorical precision. Some questioned whether the moment was a fluke, but even skeptics admitted it had disrupted the expected hierarchy of authority in the room. The split-screen narrative was stark. Jubilant supporters on one side, analysts on the other, both captivated, both forced to acknowledge the magnitude of Crockett's presence. Influencers jumped into the conversation, using hashtags, commentary, and remixed content to amplify the ripple effect. Short-form videos highlighted her calm smile juxtaposed with Clinton's subtle pause. Political podcasts devoted entire segments to analyzing her strategy, calling it a textbook example of measured dominance. Journalists wrote op-eds praising the symbolic nature of her response, an underdog standing firm against decades of institutional authority. Every corner of media, from mainstream outlets to independent channels, carried a version of the moment, ensuring that the story would reach audiences far beyond the debate chamber. The impact wasn't confined to digital spaces. Conversations erupted in workplaces, schools, and community centers. Social circles debated the significance. Was this merely a viral clip, or a demonstration of a generational shift in political discourse? The visual of Crockett's steady composure became a symbol for confidence under pressure, for intellect over aggression, for dignity prevailing where intimidation often dominated. Every retweet, like, and comment contributed to a broader cultural narrative, one where measured strength could command attention as powerfully as volume or seniority. Even politicians felt the ripple. Advisors, aides, and colleagues circulated the clip internally, analyzing the tactical brilliance behind her response. Some saw it as a blueprint for handling aggressive questioning in public forums. Others recognized it as a cultural inflection point, a moment when audiences, particularly younger and more diverse demographics, realized that authority could be challenged with grace rather than confrontation. The reverberations crossed partisan lines. Admiration for composure and strategic brilliance was nearly universal. Yet the most striking effect was the emotional resonance. Supporters expressed not just political approval, but personal empowerment. "If she can stand firm in that room, I can face my own challenges," one user typed. Comments highlighted identity pride, courage, and perseverance, linking the viral moment to broader social values. Crockett's calm mastery had become a symbol of what was possible when resilience meets clarity. The conversation was no longer just about a single exchange. It was about representation, dignity, and the power of measured confidence to shift expectations. In the hours and days that followed, the digital storm continued to grow. Clips were compiled into highlight reels, dissected in slow-motion analysis, and shared globally. Every journalist, commentator, and influencer who witnessed the original exchange recognized the moment's staying power. The hashtags trended consistently, and soon mainstream news anchors began referencing Crockett's poise as an example of a new wave of political engagement, one defined by intellect, identity, and composure. And yet, as widespread as the social media frenzy was, insiders in political circles sensed something deeper. The ripple was not just viral, it hinted at cultural resonance. Conversations in boardrooms, law offices, classrooms, and activist spaces suggested that Crockett's performance would leave an imprint on how authority, gender, and identity were perceived in public discourse. The clip had transcended entertainment and entered the realm of cultural symbol. The digital applause, the analytical breakdowns, and the viral shares were only the surface. The true impact was quieter, subtler, and infinitely more lasting. It had shifted perceptions of who could command a room, who could hold power without theatrics, and how courage paired with calm intellect could disrupt long-standing hierarchies. Everyone watching felt it. This was no ordinary debate moment. This was a defining cultural statement, yet the story was far from over. The aftershocks were only beginning, hinting at the moral and symbolic lessons that would unfold in the wake of this unforgettable confrontation. Yet the full impact was more than viral. It was cultural. The debate had ended, the cameras were off, but the echo of that single moment lingered in every conversation, every social feed, every classroom discussion. What Crockett had achieved in mere seconds was far greater than a tactical victory. It was a universal lesson in the power of composure, dignity, and the quiet strength that comes from self-assuredness. In a world often dominated by aggression, loud voices, and displays of authority, Jasmine Crockett reminded everyone that true power does not need to shout. It does not need to intimidate. It commands respect through presence, through confidence, and through the courage to hold your ground while others try to rattle you. Her calm, measured response to Hillary Clinton's pointed questioning became a symbol for millions who had long felt overlooked or underestimated. For young progressive voices, immigrant communities, and identity-conscious audiences, Crockett embodied the principle that one could face institutional power without sacrificing integrity or composure. The moment illustrated that dignity is more persuasive than aggression, intellect more enduring than theatrics, and patience more effective than panic. It was a demonstration that in the face of scrutiny or challenge, standing firm in your values resonates far beyond the immediate confrontation. This wasn't just a lesson in politics. It was a reflection of broader life truths. Every office, classroom, and living room where the clip was replayed carried the same underlying message. Respect and courage are contagious. When you meet challenges with calm clarity, when you rise above provocation, you create a ripple effect that inspires others to do the same. Crockett's poise offered a blueprint for resilience under pressure, showing that confidence paired with intellect can dismantle intimidation, shift dynamics, and even rewrite expectations. It was not just a public victory, it was a psychological and cultural one. In the larger context, Crockett's performance reshaped perceptions of progressive leadership. She demonstrated that a rising voice could navigate power structures with grace and precision, asserting authority without succumbing to theatrics. For audiences, she became more than a politician. She became a beacon of what principled leadership looks like. The applause that followed was not just for a witty or incisive answer. It was recognition of a character defined by poise, moral clarity, and unwavering self-respect. Emotionally, the crescendo of this lesson hit hardest because it contrasted so sharply with the tension of the confrontation. Where intimidation had seemed to dominate, respect ultimately prevailed. Where loudness threatened to overwhelm, measured words commanded the room. Where aggression aimed to unsettle, calm confidence redefined the narrative. Every viewer felt the power of that transformation, the shift from conflict to clarity, from chaos to composed authority. It was a masterclass in emotional intelligence, courage, and strategic thinking, all wrapped into a single moment that would linger in memory long after the debate footage faded. The takeaway was clear. True power speaks softly, but echoes loudly. In a world where loud voices often dominate headlines, Crockett's quiet confidence reminded audiences that influence does not require aggression. It requires integrity, intellect, and the unwavering belief in oneself. This principle transcends politics. It applies to everyday life, professional challenges, and personal confrontations. Watching her respond calmly while standing her ground, millions saw a reflection of their own potential to meet challenges without compromising their values. By the time the digital chatter subsided and mainstream news cycles moved to the next headline, the lesson endured. Crockett's example continued to circulate, cited by commentators, shared by activists, and admired by viewers seeking role models in leadership, resilience, and identity pride. Her composure became a rallying point, an emblem of strength for anyone navigating difficult spaces or confronting established power. In the end, the clash was not just about a question or a debate. It was about the timeless truth that respect outlasts intimidation. Dignity silences aggression, and quiet confidence leaves an imprint far more lasting than any raised voice. Jasmine Crockett had not merely answered a question. She had delivered a moral lesson, an emotional masterstroke, and a cultural statement. And for all who watched, the resonance was unmistakable. Courage, calm, and integrity are forces that never fade. They echo, The moment that captivated a nation, that froze cameras and hushed a room, now lives on in memory. Hillary Clinton's sharp question met with Jasmine Crockett's icy, unwavering smile. In that pause, the balance of power shifted, not through force, not through volume, but through calm, deliberate confidence. The exchange wasn't just a political maneuver. It was a demonstration of courage under pressure, a lesson in how composure and integrity can dismantle intimidation and leave a lasting impression. For viewers watching from home, the takeaway is clear. Real strength doesn't always announce itself with shouting. It surfaces when you stand firm, when you respond with dignity, and when you let your confidence speak louder than provocation. Crockett's example shows that facing challenges with grace, whether in politics, in the workplace, or in everyday life, can transform moments of tension into opportunities to assert your values and command respect. Her calm smile was more than a reaction. It was a masterclass in influence, a reminder that composure is a power all its own. Now, it's your turn to carry that lesson forward. Stand tall in your convictions. Meet challenges with clarity. Respond to aggression with intelligence, not impulse. Every small act of courage, every moment of calm in the face of pressure, echoes far beyond the immediate situation. If you want to keep witnessing moments where dignity triumphs over arrogance, where courage meets intellect, and where truth is unshakable, join the movement. Subscribe to this channel, share this video, and engage with a community committed to integrity, inspiration, and action. Let Jasmine Crockett's calm power remind you that the most profound impact often comes from the quietest voices, and together, we can amplify them. The debate may have ended, but the lesson endures, and so does